Well, hi, everybody. This is Dear Mama Sal, and we are live on a Sunday afternoon, which means it is time for us to deal with stress. Whoa, hang on 1 second. Here we go. That was a bit stressful for starters. All right. What happened was that I had another video lined up, the same video lined up, but there was a delay on it, and I forgot to turn the volume off. So here we go. Life happens, right? Thank you, Jeannie. That's so kind of you. Jeannie's saying, you look gorgeous. Well, don't we all want to? And Jeannie, so do you, in my mind. So everybody, I hope you have had a wonderful weekend. And we know that this has been a very exciting weekend, and we'll get to that in a moment. And because I do believe that for some people, obviously, as in any election, the results are devastating, and for other people, they are wonderful. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, because either way, it could be very stressful. And I want to make sure that we understand that. So that's part of what we will talk about, but not a lot. Only in terms of how to deal with it and how to deal with people's comments about it and how to keep stress-free, which is what we're here for. Hi, Jody, good to see you as well. I'm delighted to say that I am I don't know how to say this. I've just heard that we are in a total lockdown for another 2 weeks, starting now. Now, why am I delighted to say that? Because obviously they are concerned that there is a serious uptick and they need to get it under control. So I get to choose whether I get angry about this or whether I'm grateful for it. Does that make sense? And we're going to be talking a little bit about that as well during the broadcast, because it's all about not what's coming at you, but how do you deal with what is coming at you? And when you can see that pretty clearly, then life is less stressful. All right, now I just wanted to say that for those of you who don't know, Dear Mama Sal is a group of people who get together 3 times a week. At the times I'm going to give you our Pacific times. We get together on lunchtime on a Friday, where we talk about coping with our feelings. We get together on 7 o'clock in the evening Pacific time on a Friday, where we talk about coping with life, because life happens all the time. And then, of course, on Sunday afternoon, we talk about how to cope with stress, and we do as much as we can. All right, so Jeannie is saying, and she's in Maine, she's saying, our governor asked us all to wear masks everywhere because of the increased amount of COVID. Yeah, absolutely. And so, as we will talk about, be prepared to see more of this. It's that we knew it was coming, and therefore let's be prepared, not scared, right? For those of you who don't know, we're all about helping you cope. And by the way, helping those that you know cope with life. And I'm a great believer that if somebody had taught me these skills when I was, a lot younger, my life might have been a whole lot different. But then I also look at it and go, in a way, I'm glad that it wasn't, because I don't think I'd be doing what I do today if my life had been that different. You see, it is because I've lived the life that I have that I choose to share the knowledge and interests that I do now. And by the way, if you have a subject about which you'd like me to speak, please write to me at dearmamasal@gmail.com and let me know, and we'll add it to the list. I am sure you probably already know, but please follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We're on Pinterest. I don't put a lot up on there, but I do occasionally. On Instagram, is the only one where it's not just Dear Mama Sal. Somebody actually got there before I did. You got to give them kudos for that. And so on Instagram, you need to look for the real Dear Mama Sal, as opposed to the person who stole my name. But, you got to give them credit. They were smart enough to take it before I woke up to the fact that I was going to need Instagram, which was about a month after I started, to be fair. So they were pretty good on that one. It is said that patience is power. Patience is not an absence of action, rather in its timing. It waits on the right time to act for the right principles and in the right way. And that's why today I'm going to be talking, amongst other things, about timing. It's not, one of the things about reducing your stress is not to be not to be pushed by everybody else's. And one of the things I learned in management, in my time in management, was that I did not have to take on other people's stress, other people's chaos, other people's whatever. You see, it's only when I chose to take it on did it become my stress. And I'm going to give you some examples about what is happening to me right now, where I'm going to talk to you about what the universe is pushing on to me and how I'm choosing not to let it stress me. As you know, on Sundays, we're inclined to concentrate on letting go of our perfectionism, our self-imposed deadlines, and any other stressors, because we're dealing with being human rather than being a human doing. So human being, if you like, rather than a human doing. And it's all about, we control that. Other people don't. We control it. How we react to stress determines whether we are happy campers or not. It's amazingly simple. So remember the quote, and I will quote this every Sunday: if you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are probably living in the future. And if you're at peace, you are living in the present. And if you can live in this little slot of time that we have together, you will be at peace and you will learn something, and hopefully you will laugh a bit. But it will also be that maybe you will feel sad a bit, because that's what we do. We live life here as a group of people. Coping with stress, and let's make sure we understand what coping is. Coping means to invest one's own conscious effort to solve personal and interpersonal problems in order to try and master or minimize or even tolerate stress and conflict. And that's what we're doing. Now, I know that one of our viewers, Kerry, has had both ups and downs in the last week. She had her birthday on Halloween, and then we heard yesterday that her beloved fluff baby or fur baby, Dora, passed. Now, for any of us who have known Dora, it's like Dora and Kerry were sort of inseparable. So I am sure that any of us who have had dogs and lost them know that there are no words that we can give that make it better. And also that the pain of losing a pet is really unbelievable. And, for some of us who don't have children, losing a pet is like losing a child, because they have been that much part of our lives. And so I want to make sure that we all understand that you don't get the joy of owning a pet if you don't get the pain. I remember a vet told me that once. A vet told me that, if you don't want the pain of saying goodbye to a pet, don't get one. Mind you, you also won't get the joy of owning one. And so to me, it is part and parcel of owning a pet that it's going to be expensive, right? I think one of the best questions, I don't know about where you live, but one of the best questions that I think my local pound asks is, do you know how much do you think it's going to cost you to look after your pet per year? And I normally put in 2,000 plus. And because my reality is it costs a lot of money to own a pet, right? It's not a cheap thing, but it is never anything other than a joy, right? I mean, when I say nothing other than a joy, obviously the passing of a pet or when they get sick is not joyful, but it is part and parcel of owning a pet. It's like having a child. You know, you're going to have good days and bad days, but overall, and not too many people regret it. And so I thought I'd share with you a really nice quote that I saw in the mailbox today. And when I say in the mailbox, when I look for the mailbox, I go through the different platforms that we have and I see various comments. And one of them, I need to turn this the other way so I can see it, I think. Yeah, that doesn't help me either. Okay. Hang on a second. There we go. Maybe I can do it that way. There we go. That's much better. Brianna wrote to me and she said, I'm learning psychology. Actually, she wrote to all of us because it was a comment on a video. She said, I'm learning psychology and learned that parents are a huge part of a child's life. And when it comes to their emotions and behaviors, and it's love that a child should see during their development, which will make a great difference on that child. And then she said, I love hearing you. It makes me feel like I've got a grandmother near me. Thank you. Isn't that beautiful? And so if we all understand that those people who were lucky enough to grow up with nurturing and love from parents, yippee, I'm so happy for them. But, so many people didn't grow up with that basic love and nurturing, or they didn't grow up with the basic love and nurturing that they required. They grew up with the best that their parents could do. And that wasn't enough, to be honest. And I can't help but thank Brianna for that comment, because that's the whole reason I do the work that I do, all right, is because I believe that the stuff that we do here, the work that we do, the support and the nurturing and the learning that we do is all about replacing that education and that sense of self-worth that maybe we missed as a child. And I'm hoping that you guys can see that and understand that is really what my mission is to fill that gap that you might have lost. I saw a quote as well that I really liked, and it said, most of what makes a good book good is that we are reading it at a time that is at the right moment for us. So think about that. What do you remember as a great book that you read? And this is about timing, obviously. A great book that you read, and then think about what was going on in your life where you needed what was in that book to help you take the next step or to understand what was going on. I'm pretty sure that for anybody of my age, one of the great movies of all time for us was Gone with the Wind, which, taught so many incredibly good lessons. And, I can remember the impact it had on my life at that time. And I remember what it taught me, quite honestly, about that women could survive on their own if they had to, and how incredibly resourceful they could be. And, I keep thinking back to politically, the fact that Kamala Harris has now will become VP when the inauguration happens. And I'm thinking what an incredible impact her story will have on so many young women, and particularly women of color. And it is so exciting to me that here on the week, I believe that it's 100 years since women got the vote. We have this incredible bit of history. And to me, it is just mind-blowing. And I'll talk more about that. But going back to the book, if you think about what books made a real impact on you, and if you think about the possibility, the reason that they were so good in your mind was because they came to you at a time when you needed them, then I would also ask you to think about, Is that also true of movies? What movies did you see at a time that you were struggling, and then the movie made sense? You know, maybe the content of the movie or one line in the movie. I remember a time when I was in my late teens, when I was going through absolute heartbreak. And I remember going to the live theatre in London and seeing The Man from La Mancha. And of course, the well-known song from that was To Dream the Impossible Dream. And I can remember, and I remembered both that show and also that song for the rest of my life. And the reason was that I was just in the process of severing a relationship that really I didn't want to sever. So it was to dream the impossible dream, that I could still have it. And, you know, it's amazing because all through my life since then, whenever I have tried to hang on to the dream as opposed to reality, I sing that song to myself. To dream the impossible dream, to fight the impossible fight. You see, part of our stress is that we dream the impossible dream. Part of our stress is that we fight the impossible fight. Instead of dealing with what is, we're dealing either in the past or the future. Instead of just dealing with what we need to deal with today, that's one step at a time, and it actually reduces a whole lot of stress. So we know that part of what we do on a Sunday is talk about me time. And I always ask every week, what will you do and what will you give yourself for me time this week? And for any of you who are there or watching on the replay, feel free to leave a comment. And by the way, it is important that you do that, because your comments on the replay even will help other people see that there was value in that particular broadcast. So if you think about it, after this broadcast is finished, if you can take the time to leave a couple of comments about what the takeaway was for you during this broadcast, that would help other people know it was worth listening to. So under Be Prepared and Not Scared, there are a couple of things that I want to talk about. I want to talk about, obviously, what happened politically this week, but I want to, first of all, talk about the fact that Lauren's mom is going through an operation, possibly in the coming week. And what Lauren's reality is that her mom is going in to be assessed to decide whether or not they should do an operation. Now, that's an awful lot of chaos in her life and her mom's life, to be honest. And what happens is that if Lauren thinks the worst, she's going to be in very high stress. If she thinks nothing is going to go wrong, which a lot of people say, oh, don't worry, everything will be fine. I don't think that's reality. And I think we react to that when we hear that. Part of us knows that's not reality. And so remember, if you have a friend who's going through that level of stress, one of the best things we can do is to deal with reality. And the reality is, hey, you must be scared stiff. How can I support you? You see, that's the important thing. Can we do anything to help Lauren's mom? No. But can we support her? And Jodi's saying, listening to an audiobook, this is her me time, listening to music and baking bread are my favorite me times. That is awesome. And then Brooke is saying, I've been eating to lower stress. Well, I want to tell you, you get a body like mine when you eat to lower stress, and then it takes the rest of your life to try and get rid of it, and you end up with being pre-diabetic. So I'm hoping you're saying that with a big smile on your face, Brooke. And for those of you who understand, I used to stress eat all my life, so I take that quite seriously. Jeannie's saying, allowing a stressed person to talk is important, right? To let them talk out things that they feel and things that they fear and whatever. That's, allowing them to just verbalize is one of the greatest ways to support people. And now, but on the other hand, if I can mention this, because you've all probably had this happen to you, how many of you have tried to be a good friend and then that friend has abused you in as much as they just use you as a big toilet that they could just chuck everything into every day, all day, and spend hours, just complaining about stuff and doing. I don't think that's being a friend. All right. I don't think that's being an enabler. I believe that's being an enabler, because I don't think you help somebody when you just let them go and talk nonstop and for days and days on end. My personal view. And I believe what being a good friend is to actively listen and to hear their sadness or hear their fear and then go, wow, how can I support you now? Yes, Jody's saying being an emotional dumpster. Yes, I've had friends use me that way. Actually, Jody, would it be fair to say, because it took me a long time to realize that, is that it's not that they used you, it's you allowed it to happen. All right? You didn't put down a boundary. And, I want to tell you that, yeah, and Jody's going, yeah, 100%, I allowed it. And that's because you didn't have the skill, Jody, because we weren't taught that skill. And so, and how stressful when you go, oh no, I've got to go through this again. And you knew it was going to carry on forever. Jeannie's saying the difference between using a person and asking for help occasionally is a big difference. Yes. And Jeannie, I'm the first one to say to everybody, if you've got any issues, feel free to write to me or and I will do what I can to help you. You know that's a whole different thing. But when I find that people start, as Jody said, to use me as an emotional dumpster, one of the things, by the way, I would really recommend is getting people, your friends or whoever it is that's trying to process stuff, is to get them to write it down. Because so many times when they write it down, they answer their own questions. Jody said, I feared being an unsupportive friend by not drawing that boundary. But in fact, putting that in place is being a friend. Yes, that's understanding the difference, Jody, and I hope you kept that. I think I did send you that incredible thing that I was given once, which shows you the difference between being a friend and an enabler. You see, a friend lets you vent, but doesn't let you vent for 5 hours. A friend encourages you to, okay, go for it. Just tell me everything that's at the top of your mind, and you've got 10 minutes, And then after that, help them move on. And, the interesting thing is that I've always said to my friends, if you want help, I'm here for you. If you want sympathy, right? If what you need is sympathy, then I may not be your best person. And so I quite agree that there is a difference between somebody helping, calling for help, that's fine. All right? And so to me, this is about understand the difference. And Jody is saying, yes, one of the first lessons you taught me was how toxic I was behaving, being an enabler. But you didn't know that. Both to Jody's saying both to myself and to my friends, yes. And that is the whole thing, that, you don't have to answer every question. You don't have to be there every minute. Your job is to do it in a way that works for both of you. And that's really important. So I wanted you guys to think about this. I just literally this morning heard that we are in lockdown again for another 2 weeks. Think about this. what stress do you think that would cause? And the reason I want to talk about it is because if I'm being put down in lockdown, and by the way, if you don't know, I'm here in southern British Columbia, um, near Vancouver. If I am in lockdown, and the chances are other places are going to be in lockdown again. And so let's talk about that for a little bit. What are the stresses that come to you if you're in lockdown? Give me a few examples and let me try and tell you, it would help me just make sure that I've done my due diligence on this. And good question. Jeannie's saying, does this mean you cannot go out to eat? Yes, Jeannie, that's the first thing. All right. I normally go out for a meal on a Sunday evening after the broadcast. I will not be going today, obviously. All right. However, does that mean I can't eat Chinese? No, it means that I think I've got enough goodies here to be able to cook Chinese for myself, if that's what I really feel like eating. Jody's saying, because I live on my own, isolation, possible depression, lack of resources. So isolation, do you agree, all of you, do you agree that isolation is my choice? With today's technology, and you know I have a lot of it, with today's technology, do I have to be isolated? By the way, I had a friend of mine coming to lunch on Tuesday, and she obviously will not be coming anymore. The choice is, I wrote to her and said, not a problem. Would you like to meet up and we can have a snack together? Anyway, you see, if you think about that, we can do it virtually if we want to. And what's the difference? I don't have to cook. So that isolation, I believe, is a choice. Why would I get depressed? I would get depressed if I didn't occupy my time well. If I sat and thought it's not fair, right? If I sat and thought, well, I've been through this before, I don't want to go through it again. I actually said, thank goodness. By the way, one of the things that it affected was I immediately wrote to, for those of you who don't know, I had a fire in my house and I'm living in a rented executive suite. And they have bi-weekly housekeeping. And that's due to happen this week. Bi-weekly as in once every other week, not twice a week as I originally thought. And that would also be bi-weekly. But anyway, I immediately wrote and canceled it. And they also were meant to do a little bit of maintenance on one of the blinds. And you know what I did was I canceled both. And they wrote back and said, no, don't worry. The thing on the blinds will only take 15 minutes. And I said, no, I'm in lockdown. Therefore, I choose not to have anybody come into my suite for the next 2 weeks. Do you understand? That is my right. And I said, on my side, I open the blind, but I do not lift it. It's the lifting mechanism that's broken on this blind. I will not be lifting it. I will not be doing more damage to it. And this is definitely not essential to my life. Therefore, it can be delayed either until after lockdown or till I give notice that I will be leaving this apartment. What do you think? And so, hi, Chip. All right, so Chip is saying, I can't believe that you're in lockdown. Well, do believe it because it's true. And it stresses me that California, where I live, will follow. Well, so will most places. Why? It's that time of the year. And I would like to suggest, Chip, that if you're dealing in reality, you knew it was coming. So you could be prepared, not scared. Now, I was in shock. I thought that we would not have it quite so soon. So I don't mind telling you that I am was in a little bit of shock when I saw it. And then I immediately thought, wow, thank goodness that I can still go to my house and pick up stuff if I need to. I can still do all sorts of things. And I'm going to be talking about that. Jeannie's saying, I wanted to volunteer this year for Thanksgiving meal in her area. They said that they do not need anyone this year, maybe next year. Yes, I think we'll see a lot of that. And so, do you understand that being prepared would be what we do, right? We think about what if. Yeah, Chip's saying true. It just seems like we were just in lockdown. So what you're dealing with is, again, right? You're feeling frustration because you've got to go through it again. Now, given the choice, Chip, of doing in lockdown for another 2 weeks or getting killed by COVID, which would you prefer? You see, that's how I look at it. I actually said, oh, thank goodness they're getting it under control again. Because we know 2 weeks of lockdown will get it under control again. And I also, for those of you who knew that I went yesterday over to my house and I worked really hard on stuff with Doug. Doug came to help me and we did a whole lot of work on the house outside, getting it ready for winter. And the first thing I thought about was, talk about timing. Imagine if we hadn't done it yesterday. And the cold weather is coming in and we got everything done. And it was amazing. And so, to me, it is about, isn't it incredible? Now, Janie's making a comment about the election, and I just want everybody to take a breath because we're going to have both sides of this. And what I'd like to do is make sure that we understand that I am going to be the devil's advocate on both sides of this, all right? Because I want to make sure that you guys are able to stay calm regardless of what comes at you. And I'm going to ask for a little bit of help here to see if it is possible for us to be able to stay calm regardless of it. And what I actually, Jeannie, it's really funny, and I can show you, it was the next thing that came up, on my notes, which was election replies, are you prepared? And so I want to read you what Jeannie said, and here's what she said. She said last night, Democrats celebrated without masks or social distancing. And I'm certain that makes some of you have a reaction. And here's the truth. Jeannie, you're right. I am sure some Democrats did celebrate without masks or social distancing. And I am certain that some Republicans got angry without masks and without social distancing. So that is true of life. All right. I also myself saw an awful lot of video of a lot of people near the White House, and most of them were wearing masks. So it's not true, if you don't mind my saying so, that all did. It's like some did. Yeah, I'm sure. But some did wear masks. And so this is like, please be careful of the global statements. All right. And that's what I would ask you to be careful of. Be careful of the global statements. Also, be careful what you read in social media. Be careful. And here's my number one recommendation. What do you think you are going to hear? Do you understand that some people are celebrating today and some people are bitterly disappointed? And my reminder to you all this was exactly what happened 4 years ago. 4 years ago, there was a huge group of people that were wildly excited because Donald Trump got in. And there were another incredible group of people that were devastated because Hillary Clinton lost. And so what I ask you to do is please remember that this is what democracy is about, and that we will always have some people really happy with the result and some not. So what I'd like you to do is tell me, what sort of statements do you fear? What sort of things do you fear people saying that will trigger you? And let me see if I can help with a few answers that might be able to help you. And this is all about, I am not going to be right or wrong. I'm just going to try and give people some answers that may help them not get too triggered. Yeah. So one of the things that I really do urge you to do is to be really double check all the things that come to you as supposedly facts. And the reason I say that is because on both sides, I believe that a lot of disinformation will happen. I would like to recommend that if you hear that there was fraud in the election, I would like you to please be aware that's why we have the court system. And isn't it wonderful that we do? And I am certainly making sure that anybody who talks to me about there was fraud, I will say, and that is why I am delighted that the courts will deal with this and give us the lawful answer. Jeannie's saying Kamala Harris has stated that she wants to defund the police. Then what happens when they are needed? All right. So I think that doesn't mean that there won't be police, Jeannie. I believe that they want to, and I don't know this because I don't have all the facts, but defunding the police doesn't mean there won't be any police. It means that they want to change the criteria for policing, that they want to get rid of bad apples, that they want to if you like, restart the engine. But I understand that if you believe that defunding means there will be no police, then I understand why you'd be very fearful. I actually don't believe that's what it means. Jody's saying so much misinformation floating around, and I agree about the fact checking. Yes, it's very difficult. Chip saying what has been triggering me is how some are saying the current president will want a recount and file lawsuits. Absolutely, I believe that he will, Chip. And I believe that's right. If he believes that the votes were stolen from him, if he believes that, then I think that's what you have, the whole of the recount system. But I also remind you that your founding fathers and your electoral process allows for this. It says at the end of an election, you have in a period of, I'm not sure how many days. Sorry, I got something bugging me. In which to contest it. And that's right. He should be allowed to contest it if he honestly believes that. And so therefore, then it's up to the law to hear both sides of the story and see whether they believe there was something that happened that was wrong. So I encourage the recounts myself. I think it's wonderful. You live in a democracy. You can call for a recount, and it can be done lawfully. I think that's wonderful. And Jeannie is saying, I believe most policemen are decent, and there are some bad apples in every profession, but you do not go out and turn the system inside out. Well, what if you've tried for years and years and years to correct that thing, and it's, you can't correct it? As a management person, I have to tell you that more than once in my life, I was literally asked to go in and get rid of everybody and start again, right? Because some people thought that was easier. I'm not saying it's right, Jeannie, and I never did it, to be honest, even though I was asked to do it. But the point is, it is not all or nothing. And I believe that is what the feeling is. I think what they want to do is change how they employ people in that system. And I think that is healthy, because that's dealing with the current problems, not the past problems. And they want to make sure that the policing that they have is diverse to match the areas. I think that in a lot of ways, I understand that when you think it's all or nothing, that it becomes a huge issue. I don't believe it is. I don't believe anybody would do all or nothing. And so, all right, Jody's saying Vice President Pence aired an ad that stated Kamala Harris wanted to defund the police, but upon fact-checking, it is untrue. Yes, and that's why I'm saying make sure that you don't overreact to anything. How many of you saw something where it said that, that Trump would leave the country? President Trump would be leaving the country. I don't believe that, because I don't have that as fact. I saw this morning, apparently, Melania is just counting the minutes until she gets a divorce. I don't believe that, right? I don't believe anything until it becomes a reality. Call me Doubting Thomas, right? To my mind, it is like, I don't know who put that rumor out there. And so to me, it is sad. By the way, how many of you think that cartoons after an election are really hurtful? And I was thinking about that. I guess it depends what side you sit on, because if they're making fun, or maybe we add to that something like Saturday Night Live, if they're making fun of your person, you probably feel it badly, more badly, if you like, than somebody who's making fun of the other person's nominee. And so, this is life. And as long as we've had political satire, somebody will be upset by it. Right, Jeannie. And Jeannie's saying, aside from politics, I'm very sad Alex Trebek has died. It's part of my broadcast today. So if you hold on 1 second, I will get to that. And so, it is really be aware that you are going to hear things. Number one, if it's anything to do about fraud or whatever, make sure you just say, and that is why I'm so glad we got a court system that will deal with it. And I have to believe in the court system. Their job is to make sure it was lawful. And and that's really it. If you hear about, global statements that, just say, I'd like some time to fact check that, and let it go. If they want to believe that this is a fact, that is fine. You don't have to believe it, but you don't have to be rude about it either. Okay? And so remember that part of our job is to remain civil, and I'm going to be talking about that a bit more in a second. So for those of you who are watching for the first time, by the way, feel free to participate and join in. We love it when we meet new people and when we get a chance to interact with them. Just also be aware that after the broadcast, I will take down the chat. And I was going to say normally within the hour, but I noticed on Friday it was about 12 hours before I realized I hadn't taken down the chat on something. Let's say within the first 24 hours, I will take down the chat. But then what will happen is my voice talking about whatever the comments were on the broadcast. Obviously, I will continue to have that there, so I can't cut that out. So for my reality is, if you do want to participate, understand that, I will talk to it. And if I do talk to it, it'll stay on the rebroadcast. If you want to say something to the room, the people that are in the room at the moment, and you don't want me to talk about it, just put it right at the beginning, so don't discuss. And then I will do what I can to ignore it. Coping with our minds. Do you understand that if we're getting triggered by anything, by fear, by frustration, by anger, by whatever, if we are getting triggered, that is on us, all right? If we're getting triggered because people are stupid enough to be walking around without masks and not social distancing, all right? That means that we think we can control other people. And then, what about, well, hang on, they've told people that you're not allowed to, in my case, right, they were in lockdown, and now the people here want to let people into my apartment. Well, hello, I get to control that, they don't. And, even when I tried to say no to the maintenance thing, they came back and said, well, it's already booked, so we'll just do it for 15 minutes and you don't have to be in the apartment. And I went, no. You see, no means no. And that's really important, that you learn your boundaries. And please remember, and this is the really important thing, in the next little while all the tension dies down a bit, remember that everybody is entitled to their opinion. And just because you don't agree with their opinion doesn't mean that it's not right. It's just do your own due diligence, check things out. And so, yeah, and Jeannie's saying she found a really good deal on a roaster. And when she went to go and buy it, both the lady that was there and they both wore masks. Absolutely. That's being responsible. Obviously, I won't be able to do that for the next 2 weeks. So I want to make sure that we all celebrate democracy. Hi, Nyasha, good to see you. Celebrate the fact that you had the right to vote. Celebrate the fact that it was, that two people were allowed to do their best. Celebrate the fact that you're allowed to have a free conversation and to be able to agree or disagree, and you won't be thrown in jail for disagreeing with the president or the president-elect. Be grateful for all that a democracy brings you. And remember that whatever the result, as long as it has all been lawfully checked. I was amazed how few people understand that in the electoral process, you have both sides represented at at those sort of things, right? And to me, it's really important that we see these things and see them for what they are, all right? And that we have a system. You have a system. I'm in Canada. But, please value democracy. And that means that you accept the good and the bad, all right? And the good being when your guy gets in, and the bad is when the other guy gets in. And if you can celebrate both, I want to tell you, it takes character to be able to say, hey, my person didn't win, but I accept democracy. And also, let's celebrate diversity. I really want to do that. I just do believe that we are going to see an incredible shift in diversity. And I know that some people think, well, if they don't look like me, they don't deserve to be American. Really? That's how you built America, was bringing in people from different cultures and different everything. That's how it got built. And so, in Canada, we actually have a whole department in Canada. I don't know if you guys know that is dealing with diversity to make sure that we stay diverse, to make sure that we don't favor one group of people over the other. And so to me, I think it is really important in this day and age. Now, does that mean that we, don't keep all our traditions, whatever? Remember that as a country, Denmark decided the only way you got to be a citizen is if you agreed to certain rules, and you had to literally do that. So you have a way, if enough people want that, of controlling that. And so to me, this is about listen to both sides, because both sides have input here. Don't be deaf to what people are talking about. Hear them out. And again, think about this. It took 100 years for us to move from women getting the vote to putting a woman in as a vice president. 100 years. Imagine what will happen in the next 50. That's what I believe. And let's be aware of the timing, because I think timing is really important. So here I go. Jeannie, I said it is sad to hear about Alex Trebek passing. But you see, like everything in life, the moment I heard of his passing, I thought, wow, I am so grateful to have watched him. He started broadcasting, I think, about in the early 80s. And I remember that. I remember when he started Jeopardy. And don't you think it's incredible that he did his last recording? Let me just see here. I think in October, end of October. And so to me, I think it is so important that we don't concentrate on his passing, except to give our thoughts and prayers away to his family and all of us who he touched, but to remember what a great man he was and what an incredible impact he had on television. And I think, I don't know about you, but what word would you put to Alex Trebek? You know, what words would you, when you think about him, what words come to mind? And I put down his grace. I found him very graceful. You know, he just had a way about him that was very graceful. I also valued his ability to keep control. Yeah, Jeannie's saying he was a wonderful, kind, smart, easygoing man. Now, I don't know. That's surely what he showed, right? And I agree with you. That's the image that I got of him. But do we really know that? What was he like at home? Do we really know? Yes, Jodie's confirming on October 29th was his last show. We were blessed to see him on TV for 37 years. Absolutely. And by the way, they have enough shows in the can that they can now run his shows from now until Christmas. And they will show, with tears in my eyes, they will show the last show on Christmas. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm carrying on with some of the words that came to mind when I thought about him. His smile, didn't he have a beautiful smile? You know what I mean? It was just like, he just had such an engaging smile. Yeah, Jeannie's saying he said he worried about being a burden to his wife, but she loved him, yes. And Jodie's saying his kind demeanor, he was self-deprecating sense of humor. Yes, his humor was on my list as well. Such a class act, yes. And I also said his intellect. You imagine how learned he became just by doing the show. I don't care how well read he was when he started it. Can you imagine asking those questions for 37 years? His knowledge base must have been so big by the time he finished. And so I give thanks for having experienced all of that. And that takes away a lot of the hurting for me. But I do have some quotes from him that I would like to share. And I thought that some of you might also ask the question, which was, who's going to do Jeopardy now, or will it just fizzle away? Now, I know that those of you who are romantics will say, oh, they should just cancel the show because he was the show, and nobody will ever do that. And, you know, it was interesting because I think we all thought that about they should cancel Bond after Sean Connery, who also passed in the last 8 days, you know, after he decided he wasn't going to do it anymore. But, you know, we've had all sorts of people play Bond, and nobody will ever do it like Sean Connery did, but they've done their version of it. And so, you know, I think life goes on. Do I think Jeopardy will continue? Well, first of all, I checked the facts. And I went to Sony Pictures and to see what they are saying. And this is what they said. Sony Pictures, which produces Jeopardy, told Newsweek Sunday that the company does not yet intend to share details about a new host. Okay? So that doesn't say that they're not going to continue. This says it's just not going to tell you who the new host is at this time. That's out of, you know, being respectful of the Trebek family. Jeannie's saying that Ken Jennings might take it over. I believe there are all sorts of people that they're talking about. Jennings, wasn't he a contestant? So, you know, it's like there are all sorts of people that whose names, quite honestly, Doesn't really matter. Yes, and Alex quoted he wanted Betty White because she was younger, which wasn't true. She is a lot older than he was. But, it's just like, I loved Trebek's humor on that one. And also, think about that. Trebek chose, I want you to think about and celebrate this and think about the timing of this. Did Alex have every right when he got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer to stop working and just enjoy what was left of his life? By the way, I lost a stepbrother to pancreatic cancer. I lost him in a hurry. And so I know that the fight is, I know what the odds are, and I know quite a bit about it. And what Alex did was he continued to work. He continued, to do as much as he could to put all the shows together. Why? It was his life. And he believed that doing the show was of benefit to the world. You see, he believed that at a very deep level. The same is that if you have that purpose in life, it's not work. It is what you do. It is part of your life. And so for all of you who might be ill, for all of you who are struggling, he knew he was dying and still just did the best he could every day. And that included working. And so I think there is an incredible lesson for us all in that. Oh, Nash is saying, what about Tom Bergeron? Yes, he not only hosted America's Funniest Home Videos, but he also did Dancing with the Stars, I believe. He has a great television presence, I agree. We can come up with 1,001 names. And I am certain that Sony has already made that decision. And I'm pretty certain they probably made it with Alex. Right? I am pretty certain that Alex would have been part of that process. But, the truth is, do I think they'll stop Jeopardy? No. Why? It's a big money maker, people. Right? You got to look at the dollars and cents. And so, to me, it is all very, very important. By the way, I was thinking in terms of the election. Am I correct that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that Biden is only the second Roman Catholic to be put into the presidency, right? John F. K. being first. So, for all that are Catholics, I'm certain that they are celebrating. So, again, do you understand? We can have all the social media going around who's going to replace him. Ah, that's interesting. Sandy puts 2 and 2 together, and she said, he just quit Dancing with the Stars. Maybe he was in talks. I would say if he quit, maybe he was in more than talks. Maybe he already has the contract. You understand? I think good call, Nyasha. But we don't know, and we won't know until Sony tells us. Will stressing out about it make a difference? No. Sony's already made the decision. It's like, it's their show. Let them do what they want to. None of our business, really. Now then, I wanted to give you a tip of the week. And this one is going to require that I mess up my hair. So, one of the things that a lot of people compliment me on is the amount of body I have in my hair, especially at 73. So I thought you might like to know, what do I do to create that? Now, I understand that I do have a head of hair. Right? I understand that I, at my age, am very fortunate to have the head of hair that I do. And I believe that part of it is because I have always eaten dairy, and I will continue to eat dairy. And that's why I've got long nails and good hair, my thing. But what I wanted to show you was, even because of that, I wanted to show you what I do with my hair and to see if it helps anybody. So here we go. When I wash my hair, one of the first things I do, just hold on 1 second. Okay. One of the first things I do is I normally let it air dry. In other words, it is absolutely wet. And then first thing I do, I think you guys know this. Hang on, I'm going to get my doodads out of here. Doodads being bobby pins. Okay, so the first thing that I do is I wash my hair, and then, actually I just need to brush it quickly so that I can do this easily. Okay. All right, the first thing that I do when it's wet is I go like this, okay? And then I leave it for maybe 15 minutes. Now, what I'm doing here is what I call the dog shake, because that's what a dog does when he has wet hair. He pushes it all to the ends, right? That's when they shake. I'm not going to do that. But when they shake, that's what they're doing. So I do the dog shake with my hair all over. Two things. It helps make sure that I've got lots of motion going at the roots, and it pushes the water out. Then what I do is I put on some gel, okay? And when I put the gel on, I don't know if you've noticed, but my hair is inclined to part here, okay? What I do once I've got the gel on is I do the total opposite. I push all my hair with the gel to the other side. How many of you are going, why? And then what I do is after about 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is, I will then part my hair about an inch in, because this part will already be dry. And guess what? It's already got body because it dried the other way. I wonder if that makes sense. Does that make sense? And then I leave it another 15, 20 minutes, and then I part it another inch down, by which time that bit is dry. And I let this bit dry going the wrong way. Can you see that? And then I do that. Now, this lot, I do not let it dry here. I push all this over when I get that far. And then I do the reverse. And after about half an hour, I pull about an inch of it down and let it, because by then this will be dry, leave this bit for half an hour. And then the very last thing I do, and I know Jody asked me about this once, and I just want to show you, the very last thing I do is I never have a straight part, okay? What I do is I actually divide my hair up. Okay, and I'm going to do that again so you can see what I do. Okay, so this is how my hair is. And the last thing I do is I put my fingers in and I take a little bit. I never have just a straight part. I take a little bit and move little bits to the wrong side, because that gives this side more lift. Okay? And I guess one of the next things I do is when I got it like this, I then lift it like that and spray it and let it drop. I lift it like that, spray it as it drops. Lift it like that, and I spray it as it drops. And the other thing I don't mind telling you, and I've said it before, that the day I stopped coloring my hair was the day I started to get body back in my hair and the curl. If I do use a dryer at all, it's to get some of the curl out, because my hair, for some reason, when I stopped coloring it, got a curl to it. And so, occasionally you will see me with quite a lot of curls. It means that And what I do is, as it dries, I try to just do this. If I haven't used a hairdryer today. So all this is done the way, and you can choose to believe that or not. Okay, so Jody, I hope that helps you. Jody was talking about the fact that, because of her illness, she's lost quite a bit of hair. And so the other thing is, Jody, maybe look into, other things that will help you. But I do know that your hair, it's like your makeup, right? Your hair is a major part of your self-esteem. So I think it's wonderful that you're looking at options, and it's wonderful that you're looking at possibly getting wigs. Great thing. The same thing, Jody, if it makes sense to you, one of the things I ask myself is, I'm losing, I've lost quite a few teeth. And what if I lost my smile? How many of you know that my smile is a major part of who I am? And that's why, to me, it's like, do I want to take some money and put it away because, and maybe do the research now to find out, can they, can I get veneers for or have I already lost too many teeth for them to be able to do that? In which case that would mean implants and, all sorts of things. It's going to be a lot of money that I don't have, but maybe there is a way, right? And I know that for every year I wait, there is also a possibility that it will cost less. Right? It's a bit like computers and things, right? For every year you wait, they're coming down in price. So, anybody got any questions? Oh, the other thing is, right, Niasha's saying, teeth don't make a smile, a person does. I agree with you. But the truth is, if you are somebody that spends a lot of time on video, which I do, teeth, become pretty important. Jeannie's saying, I've decided not to color my hair since March. Many people say they like it. It's still two-tone, reddish on the ends, yes. But, I want to tell you something. I waited until I was white to about here before I stopped coloring. Jody's saying, my emotional process was and is accepting that it is what it is. I am mourning those days when I asked to be a hair model for my local Regis. When you were asked to be a hair model for your local Regis salon, yes. And I could mourn the days that I was a model for Vogue. But really, that was then, and this is now. And so, yes, Jody, that's your lesson, right? Can you let go of what you were and become who you are? And, everybody here will tell you who you are as a magnificent human being, with or without a full head of hair. And that is, apparently I've parted it slightly differently because it's now falling all over the place. But, that is the important thing. And by the way, Jody, the way I look at it is this, that I've even gone as far as to say to myself, if I could not be on video, because I lost my teeth or whatever, could I still do the work? Oh, yeah, I would. I just would do podcasts, not video. You see, I could still do the work. I could still put together the things that I want to talk about in a different way. It's going to take an awful lot to shut me up. I'm on a mission. And, how many of you know that, it would be an incredible honor in my life if I could do what Alex Trebek did. Yes, and Jeannie's saying that York, that's her husband, his aunt is almost bald, and yet the most charming, lovely lady. Yes, and that doesn't affect who you are. It affects your ego if you allow it to, right? All right, and Jody's saying, I know it's silly to be emotional about it. It's just here. I'm lucky to be here and grateful. Yes, you are lucky to be alive. We know that. But hang on a second. Hi, Rinsky. But Jody, think about this. I don't think that you're silly to be emotional about it. Quite honestly. I don't think that's supporting you at all. It's like saying, that it's silly for Kiri to be sad about losing Dora. That's unrealistic. Of course, you are going to be emotional about it. You're a human being, for goodness sake. All right, it's a loss, right? You've got to go through the cycle of loss. And by the way, when will you get the wig? I know when you'll get it. When you look in the mirror one day and said, I should have got a wig a month ago. All right? Or, you know what I mean? It's like you will wait till the very last moment when you cannot bear to look at yourself with that little hair, and then you'll get the wig. Or you will get the wig and start practicing wearing it every now and then until it becomes, okay, I really like wearing this. You don't have to wait that long. And I'm really struggling now. I should never brush my hair. You understand, I've got hair that likes to do what it wants to do. And I'll try not to keep playing with it, or I'll go and get some glue and stick it down. Yes, Jody, there really will be. There will be a day when you just say, okay, that's enough. I need the wig now. Yeah. And until then, the same with grieving, right? Everybody has their own speed at grieving. And some people do it a very funny way, all right? And people are still amazed that I never cried when my mother died. Why? I'd grieved before she ever died. I made sure I did. Big time. So Nyasha's saying, it's so difficult to think of what once was with our new life. The Jody thing is happening to me now. Imagine I'd been living a nightmare before, and I miss it. But I shouldn't, but I do. It just is what it is, Nyasha. Life is strange and funny like that. Absolutely. And Rinsky is saying, my dad has diabetes and his blood sugar tested at 259, 2 hours after eating. All right, so 259, for those of you who live in Canada, hang on, because we deal on a different thing. 259 would be sort of in the 14 range, if I got that right. About 14 in Canadian. So that's very high, all right? But again, Rinsky, of course you're worried, but you know something? Thank goodness they found that out, right? Because now they can do something about it. If Sandy is here, Sandy, how bad did you go before they took the action? You see, I think the same thing happened to Nyasha. I'm not quite sure. Nyasha, what was your blood sugar at when they took action? Then they realized that you had a problem. Thanks, Sandy. So Sandy's saying that it is actually, yours was at 43? No, surely not. Are you serious? It was up in the 700s? Oh, it's way off my scale even. Wow. All right, Nyasha's was 200. So 200 in Canadian would be about 11. Okay, so we have to speak both official languages here in diabetics. So the thing is this. Jody was in the 700s as well. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Rinsky, does that sound a whole lot better? By the way, Rinsky, what I want you to concentrate on is Jody is already off insulin. She not only was in the 700s, but she did enough of the right things that she ended up not even staying on insulin. All right? So the good news is we know how to treat it. Hi, Beth. Great to see you, honey. So you understand this, Rinsky. If your daddy does the right things, exactly, it's not, 250 isn't nearly as bad as 700. And there are two of my viewers that were in 700 when they were diagnosed. So give thanks that they found it at the 250 mark, right? And go, now it's up to him. You can worry yourself sick, but that only one person is going to decide how well he does, right? And that's him. They're going to tell him what to do, and he will either do it or not. By the way, it's a huge learning curve, Rinsky. And you're not going to be able to nag him to do the right things. He's going to want to do it or not. Does that make sense, honey? All right? I know my reaction on hearing that I was pre-diabetic was, wow, I am so lucky. And my doctor looked at me and went, yeah, so you've got to be the only person who comes back with that diagnosis with saying, I'm so lucky. Why do you think you're so lucky? I said, I ate that many Mars bars and got away with it this long. That's all I could think about was, and I still, to this day, as Jody and everybody that's part of the fitness group will tell you, I still struggle with things that are sweet, right? And I've been minding my sugar for since December last year. So a year and a bit. Yeah, nearly 2 years now. And I still crave sugar, right? I'm still not good with it. But the difference is today, I know that when I come in with, I've got to make sure I've got the American version of this. I know that when and by the way, mine is always worst first thing in the morning. For some reason, I have what they call that syndrome, the early morning syndrome. And I've been hitting high 7s and 8s first thing in the morning. Now, the joke is that I know that that's too high, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to die. It means it's still in the normal range, by the way. It's like they call it a nominal A1C, right? It means I'm pre-diabetic, which I am. If I want to be healthy, I've got to get it below there. I've got to get it below 7. Oh, 7 being 5.7. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, 7 being below 126. And, I was doing that when I was in my house. But, I've had a lot of stress since then, a lot of excuses. But, excuses are not going to fix it. My actions are going to fix it. So Nyasha said, I've got an issue where no medical professional can figure out, and each and every time it happens, my vital signs go up dramatically, both blood sugar and blood pressure. Yeah, and so, that's a health issue and it's scary when you've got something like that. But at least people are listening to you now, Nyasha, and they're looking at it, right? Sandy's saying, oh, those little Halloween chocolates are my enemy. I've nearly finished my box of real fruits. I'm not sure how many I've got left, but I reckon this week we'll probably do it. So I totally agree with you. Once I've got rid of that box, every year I buy a box of candy, and that's, it's nearly finished. Yes, and Brinsky's game, I'm so glad you found out before it turns to diabetes. Well, it's like, think about it. Jody was 700, and she has done enough of watching her diet to get her off insulin. Jody, what was your last A1C? So, this is all about. All right, she went from being 700. What is that in American? Hold on. So that would be about 104. She went from being 700 to bringing her blood glucose down 5.1. quite honestly, 5.1 would be, no, about 90, right? Her A1C was 5.1, so A1C, that would be 100, roughly 104. Okay, so you understand, this is about how did she do that, is what you're asking. Well, she did intermittent fasting. She really, really controls her intake. And she's done keto, she's done all sorts, everything it takes to get it done. And she's done it. And Beth says, I don't think I've ever had my blood sugar checked that I can remember. You know, it's worth asking them, Beth, to check yours. You know, and the reason I say that is because you could probably the opposite, right? Because the amount of calories that you burn in a day, you could be in the opposite situation, you know, where you need to take more sugar. So you understand that when you hear, oh gosh, you know, my father's been rushed to hospital because he's at 259. I totally agree that it's very worrying. But, you know, when you hear that Jody was at 700, when you hear that Sandy was at 700, and they're here chatting away, quite living, you know, pretty normal lives. You see, it takes a lot of the stress away, I hope, Rinsky. And that's why we're here, right? To bring you real life numbers. Now, does it mean that your dad is going to have to do a lot of work? Yes. But, you know, again, be very careful, because he may not want to do that much work, right? And he will fight it, because that's human nature. Do they make you fast before getting checked? They do. If my doctor made me fast because they gave me a sugar load. I don't know what they do in the States, but what he did was that he gave me that sugar load. In other words, what they do is they force you to drink a lot of glucose, and then they monitor it for 2 hours to see how well it gets absorbed. Rinsky saying, this is such a wonderful group. Thanks, everyone. Well, you remember, Rinsky, the whole reason we're here is to support one another, because life has its ups and downs, right? And you probably didn't think that you were going to be on the receiving end of this. But you see, life happens. And when it does, we get to support one another. See, and Astra's busy thanking Jody for some input that she gave her. So you understand, it's all about, you know, it happens to us all. All right. And you guys were there for me, and I will continue, hopefully, to be there for all of you. And so this is our reality. Life happens. All right. Now I'm beginning to run out of time here. Jody, could you remind me to please start next week's broadcast on slide 29. In other words, anything from slide 29 onwards, I need to put in for next week. If you could just make a note of that for me, then I will do that. So Jeannie's saying, tomorrow I have my annual mammogram. No problem, but my mother and cousins had breast cancer. So that's called be prepared, not scared, right? Which is, I was having an annual one, Jeannie, and they actually said to me that they don't need to do mine every year anymore. So be aware and get some research done on that, Jeannie. My professional said to me that the recent information that they're getting is that having the mammogram every year can be detrimental. And they've actually told me that and the same thing as they have stopped doing my chest x-ray every year. And because of your history, they do it every year. Yes, I understand that. So this is about, that's called weighing up your odds, right? Beth is saying, I do know I have high cholesterol for some reason. Exactly. And it's not because of your diet, right? So maybe the two are linked. By the way, Beth, I did ask my doctor, can I get off my cholesterol medication? And he said, Sal, your diet's not going to do that. And the reason is, I think, because I think part of my cholesterol is hereditary. Yeah, and that's what Rinsky's saying. So, and Jody's saying, I had a scare last year, so I need another mammogram and ultrasound. Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you're anything other than being cautious, all right? And so here's the thing about stress. Stress is when we worry ourselves sick about things. Stress is when we take on too much of other people's stuff. Stress is when we cannot control the external factors and just get them balanced. I am certain you all agree that the last week of elections was very stressful. I bit off 3 nails and I'm not even in the country, for goodness sake. And so I look at it. Beth is saying, hey, they said my good cholesterol is so high that it cancels out the bad. Exactly. So having high cholesterol, and if it's good high cholesterol, if your cholesterol is good, that's very different from having high bad. And so, I would say then the reason you have good cholesterol is because of your diet. You eat a very interesting diet, Beth. And so I would like to say that stress is a factor for us all. And how we control it is up to us. Remember how we respond to people criticizing. Remember what I said. In terms of the election, remember that everything that you feel about the election this year, the other people felt 4 years ago, whether it's good or bad, right? Because 4 years ago, it was different. And so be compassionate of that. Yeah, Jeannie's saying her bone density is good because she drinks milk and eats cheese. Same thing with mine. All right, Jeannie, I had osteoporosis X-ray done, whatever they call that. And they said, I have the bones of a 20-year-old. And why did I have it done? Why? Because there was history of it in my mother had osteo. And I didn't have to repeat what my mother did. I have always been somebody that eats dairy, and I will continue to. Now, that puts me at risk for different things, but I can control that as well if I want to. Beth said, I thought there was only one sort of cholesterol. They're HDLs and LDLs or something. Jody will know. I call her Dr. Jody because she has all that information. But, it's just like, not all things that we hear are bad, right? Be very careful about all that you hear about the fraud and people not being allowed to do counting or whatever. Be very careful. There was an awful lot of misinformation that went out. Trust the courts to check all the facts and trust the courts to decide, what needs to be recounted, and trust the courts to make sure that they put in the rules to make sure that recounting is fair. I can remember when we had to do recounts for Bush and Gore back when they had that, and that was just the Florida thing. The whole of the election hinged on Florida. And so to me, it's like if you trust the democratic process, if you trust that everybody has been prepared for these sort of things, and the electoral system has both Democrats and Republicans in it, and they are equally in it and they equally get to oversee it. Now, were there certain places where that went a bit straight? That would be probably quite likely. But the courts will allow for that. The courts will look at it all, let them see the facts. Let us not prejudge it all. All right? And please let us be decent people. Let us be civil to one another. We don't have to agree, but it doesn't mean we have to be nasty. And so for me, okay, that's very interesting to me, Jeannie. Jeannie's saying, I work for the chief of GI research, and he was working on getting rid of gallstones. Let me know. I have one. If you got any handy hints what I should be doing, let me know. Apparently, that's what they found out when they did my last chest x-ray. They found out I have a gallstone. A little one, but I have one. So, look at that. Thank you, Jeannie. All right, so Niash is saying, this is the first time I followed the American election so closely. I'd been so nervous myself, just waiting to hear who the next president was going to be. So you see, Niash, that's about having a vision bigger than yourself, right? That you can, this is where I live, it's on a little island, but I can get interested in other people, all right? And I hope that you learned something, maybe that you never want to be in that sort of situation. But I really do believe that being in a democracy is the greatest gift we can be given. And I don't want any of us to forget that. And the American people have spoken, and the courts will make sure that whatever needs to be recounted will be, and that it will be a legal thing. And will everybody be happy with that? Of course not. It's human nature that those who lost will be upset. It is human nature that those who won will be happy. But you know, it happens every 4 years, people. Let's make sure that we remember that we keep balance. Jenny's saying this sheep ate eggs daily. They came from Canada. Yeah, I have omega-3 eggs daily. And then Ashley's saying it's the first time I did that, and I believe it's because I'm now understanding what's happening. Yeah, well, you know that you don't have any choice when when I'm in there. Right? Part of my thing is that we all need to be more aware of what's going on. Do you know what's going on in China? Do you know what's going on in India? Do you know what's going on, anywhere? Why? Because it's all, we live in a global world now. Nyasha, think about it. How much of your life has changed because you were able to talk to people in other countries who were able to help educate you because of their knowledge? Think about that. That is what the global village is all about. Because of our technology, you can get support from people, that probably is equally helpful to you as the support you're getting from your medical system. Why? You got people who understand your questions. You got people who've been there and done that and can tell you what to look out for. And so I hope that every night you go to bed and you thank God for technology, because without it, you probably would be living a very different life. So everybody, our lives are filled with stress. It has to do with how much do we react to what we hear. You understand, suddenly being put down in 2 weeks of lockdown when I have stuff going on at my house is very difficult. But it doesn't mean I can't go to my house. It means lockdown means I can't congregate with people. So it does mean I won't be able to go to Sunday dinner. It does mean that I will have to let some other things. And so I look not at the negative of everything. I look at the positive. And Jeannie is saying, that I am happy to live in the United States. I love our rules, our regulations, our flag, and our system, and I am not ashamed of my country. Absolutely. Be grateful to live in a democracy. And so, and Beth is saying, I wish I could lock down for a few days. Yeah. And Nyasha is answering tremendously so. I never knew what inflation was, and I'm 35. Imagine that. It's because of you. Also, medical Sal. I am so grateful to you all so very much. Well, I want to tell you something, Nyasha. It is our pleasure. And you know, it is our pleasure to be able to share with you the little that we know. And we are just so happy that it's been of such benefit to you. And you cannot imagine, Nyasha, what it feels like for us to see the information that we've been able to share to you, with you, make the difference that it has for you. All right? And, you know, we've had so many stories like yours over the years of doing Dear Mama Sal. And, you know, you are just part of, and, you know, the way that you come in and you help others as well. It's really important. Because one day there's going to be another Nyasha that comes in there and they're going to think that they haven't got a hope of getting better because they don't understand what's happening. There's going to be another Jody, you know, that thinks that just because they've had cancer, you know, life's going to cease. Or that they then, you know, beat cancer and then they ended up with lymphedema, which Jody did. You know, all these things, the reason we can help one another is because we've got people who've been there and done that and are still living healthy, productive lives. We're going to have Rinsky come in, another Rinsky going to come in and say, my daddy just got sent to hospital with, you know, blood glucose of 300. And Rinsky's going to say, you know something, a year ago, my daddy went in with 259 or whatever it is. You see, that's how we support one another. And I do believe that we have the most incredible ability to support one another. Beth saying, I have bronchitis this week. Customers look at me as though I have the plague. I wear a mask. Well, I would think with your medical conditions and bronchitis, the mother hen in me would like you to be in bed and stay there. But you're not going to do that. So please look after it as best you can. Get as much rest as you can when you're not doing the opposite of what you're meant to be doing. You know? This is your life, and I will try very hard to not judge them. But Beth, you know me so well. And the reason I say that is I'm somebody that used to suffer a lot from bronchitis. So I know what it takes to get rid of it. And I know. Never mind. On that very human note, Beth, you will do exactly what you want to do. And you'll know what the risks are. So this is DearMamaSal saying, what is stress? How much I worry about Beth is my choice. Because you see, Beth isn't that worried. So I just need to breathe and let it go and trust that Beth is not nearly as stupid as I appear to think she is. This is DearMamaSal saying, isn't it wonderful that we're all just human? Bye-bye for now.